fortune in this party. His name is Cody Anderson. He was just recently elected the chair of the Libertarian Party of New York. So please welcome Cody.
Good evening, everybody. Rebecca, thank you very much for a nice introduction. Also want to, of course, thank Jo Jorgensen and her team for coming here today. So thank you very much for coming to New York. This location is filled with irony. We're on Liberty Street, here in the least free state in the country. We're here at Zuccotti Park, which was possibly one of the biggest demonstrations against a free market that this nation, possibly the world, has ever seen. We libertarians here in New York, we've made a lot of progress. We got ballot access in 2018 from Larry Sharp, bringing us to what we needed to get ballot access. We were promised 4 years of ballot access, and they slipped into the budget a condition that we would have to try again for this presidential election. We need 160,000 votes on the Libertarian line for Jo Jorgensen in order for us to keep our ballot access. We need everybody here to turn out and vote for Jo Jorgensen. No further ado, I want to introduce you to the lady that you're all going to be voting for, the next President of the United States, Jo Jorgensen.
Thank you so much for having me. I am the granddaughter of immigrants. 3 of my 4 grandparents came to this country looking for freedom. By the way, it's rather ironic that one of my grandfathers came from Sweden looking for liberty, and yet Sweden was not under house arrest. They were able to continue shopping, going to schools, and enjoy the restaurants. However, I got the most love of my country from my grandmother, who explained to me how the old country, the government just basically took anything extra that you had. It didn't matter how hard you worked, it didn't matter if you worked a second or third job, that the government took the extra because they wanted everybody to be the same. And listening to her, it sounds like she might be from the Soviet Union or an Eastern Bloc country. Actually, she was from Denmark. And unfortunately, we're looking more and more like Denmark every day. And I'm here to tell you that unlike the politicians in Washington, I believe that you know best what's best for you, and that's why I'm asking for your vote for President of the United States. However, we cannot claim to be the land of the free when we have 5% of the world's population and yet house 20%. I'm sorry, yeah, we have 5% of the population, but we house 20% of its prisoners. And part of the quadruple that we've had of the prisons is because the government today is from a racist and destructive war on drugs. And if you look around, you'll see that basically we've got judges who've had discretionary decision-making taken out of their hands. So we've got mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters locked away for 10, 20 years, sometimes a lifetime, for a victim, for a crime that had no victim. We're repeating the same problems we had in Prohibition. If you look in the 1920s, it didn't work out well with the gang shooting in Chicago, with Al Capone's gangs, and that's what we have today. When was the last time you heard of a liquor store going up and down the halls of a high school, trying to push gin on the high school schools? Or when's the last time you heard of a vodka addict breaking into houses in order to support a vodka addict? Or when's the last time you heard of 2 liquor store owners having to shoot out for the best one? What we have now is not a drug problem. What we have is a prohibition problem. There should be no law preventing you from owning any object, whether it's a gun to defend yourself or drugs for whatever reason you wish. We also need to look to the military to see where the government has let us down. We've had, in our war on terror, in which we have people over there fighting who weren't even born when it started, we have over 500,000 deaths in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq, and 250,000 of those are civilians. And again, these are mothers and fathers and children who will never come home. If I'm elected president, my very first act will be to bring the troops home. Switzerland, armed and neutral. We have to defend our shores, but we need to come home and stop meddling around the world. Unfortunately, thank you. Also, we have an IRS that, first of all, has regulations that are so difficult you can't even navigate the code without any tax accountants or lawyers working through. And then that same IRS that taxes us to death probes into every personal financial decision that we make. Meanwhile, the people in Washington, they can't even balance their own budget. Now, half the people say we need to increase military spending, and the other half say we need to increase domestic spending. So what's our bipartisan compromise? To simply increase all spending. As president, my veto pen is going to need a lot of extra ink.
So there have been calls across the country to defund state and local police forces. As our next president, would you pledge to defund state and local police forces?
Okay, for those of you who couldn't hear, it's about defunding state and local police forces. Crime is a local issue. Assault, robbery, burglary, those are local issues, and they should be decided among the local people, the police, mayor, city council, taxpayers, voters. So we need to put the power back into their hands. I, as president, would keep the federal government out of local policing, and if they choose to defund, that's their option. If they choose to increase funding, that's their choice. It's something that the federal government should be into. In fact, part of the problem, I think part of the escalation that we've seen is we no longer have like the local beat cop where you see to protect and serve a community. Now we have the federal government giving excess military supplies like tanks and tear gas to 8,000 federal, state, and local police forces. I would stop that immediately. I don't expect the police departments to say no when they're offered a tank. I mean, I'm sure what they're thinking is, hey, we don't want that tank to go to Alabama. Our taxpayers pay for it. Sure, we'll take a free tank. So we have militarized our police. So now, instead of protect and serve, now it's us versus them, like military. And I don't want to be at war with any other country, and I certainly don't want to be at war with our citizens. So now you know I have a lecture that I can give a long answer. I'll try to keep it shorter. But I feel very strongly about the government, the federal government, allowing states and localities to make their own decisions. Thanks. Yeah, so everybody knows that Social Security is in jeopardy, and when people ask me why I'm running for office, I say it's because government is too big, too bossy, too nosy, too intrusive. But the worst part is they usually end up hurting the very people they try to help. So Social Security, they thought, hey, let's help people have a secure retirement. And now we're all paying into a system that we out to anybody who wanted to, and I'm sure most people would take an immediate opt-out. By the way, that's very similar to the Cato 60.2% solution. Now, you also asked about Medicare, Medicaid. So, again, I'm sorry.
You said sell the buildings and then that.
I'm sorry?
Couldn't hear you go to the truck.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll step a little closer. The other question was about Medicare and Medicaid. And I'm sorry, since he asked me 2 questions, basically I'm going to answer 2 questions. So the problem with health insurance is that it's not insurance at all. In any other industry, it's there for unexpected costs, and so it remains relatively low. And if you look at car insurance, what if it paid for your gas, oil, and car washes? You'd have absolutely no reason to shop around for the best prices. And the gasoline stations wouldn't have any reason to compete on price, because you could simply go to any gas station you wanted, even the nice one that gave you free coffee, pay your little $5 copay card, and then be off and running. They could raise prices to the insurance company, who could raise your premiums, and then you're in a cycle. So what I would do to get the ball rolling with competition in healthcare is I would do something like the state of Indiana, in which I would put dollars into the pockets of not only people with Medicare and Medicaid, but also our veterans, because our veterans need to be treated better than they are, and let them get the ball rolling with competition. So thanks for that.
We're in a time now where immigration policy is very far-sighted on both sides. The left thinks that it's more, and it's bad for the dreamers coming here. The right thinks it's good because we're protecting against child sex trafficking, things like that. What would your stance on immigration be?
Wait, did you kind of go from immigration to sex trafficking?
Well, because I bring that up because thing on the right, a common theme on the right is we need strong borders to protect against child sex trafficking. However, the left would say we don't need strong borders, so whoever wants to come in can come in as they please.
Well, I would suggest we've got pretty strong borders now, and we have way too many sex traffickers. So once again, government can't get it done. And in fact, I think private individuals can do it much better than the government. But looking at the border, again, I said I was the grandchild of immigrants. I want to have open borders similar to how we had in our country before the 1920s. My grandparents came over in the teens, and bringing immigrants into our country, allowing them to come in, only helps our GDP. By the way, it's a myth that they come over here just to live off of our system. Most of the welfare programs, you have to be here for 5 years before you can even access them. And if you look at the numbers, GDP goes up with immigrants. Also looking at crime, because the right has concerns about that. Looking at crime, people in America who are born on foreign soil have fewer crimes per person than people born on American soil. So that's not a reason, because we need to make the country stronger than
Which one you said? We actually see the Department of Justice and Health and Human Service numbers that 88% of children found in sex trafficking are coming out of the foster system. Now, that the court that's putting kids in the foster system is the family. What would your efforts be in reforming this? But there's no oversight at all.
Again, crime is a local issue. Assault, robbery, burglary, or even child molestation. That's a local issue. And, you know, what I would say is if the federal government could do such a good job, if the FBI could do such a good job, why haven't they stopped it? I mean, I don't want to see the money go into a system that doesn't work. And I need to look this up because I just quickly read an article about this guy, a journalist who, doing his work, and he's one of these quantheads, you know, crunches numbers, and he crunched numbers, and he figured out that in Indiana, in a town in Indiana, it looked like there was a serial killer on the loose. He notified the police, you know, one of the police officers. They did nothing. So then he notified the police chief, who did nothing. And then a few years later, they realized, oh, you know what? We think we have a serial killer. So they contacted him and asked him for his help. So he has started an organization, and it's called MAP, and I need to look up what it stands for. But he's gone into, he's created an organization, for instance, with a former FBI official, an FBI agent, who says, we've got so much more latitude here, there's so much bureaucracy in the FBI, we never got anything done. We're able to really get out there and make a difference and run these statistics and help, you know, basically they're like a consulting team for the local police. Again, I think that the free market can do anything better than the government, and that's just one more example. Thanks. Okay, let me go. You. Okay, wait, did you already ask me a question? Okay, you're all first timers? Okay.
Maine is going to use ranked choice voting for the first time this election cycle. How's your feeling about that, and what is the Libertarian Party feeling about it, and if they're doing anything to try to bring that to more states, if there's an effort we can do it?
Ranked choice voting is awesome because it gets rid of the wasted vote argument, although I'd like to address that too at some point. But, you know, it's surprising how little choice the candidate has when it comes to where you go and what you do. And not that I don't love everybody in New York, but I told my campaign team we have to go to Maine because they've got ranked choice voting. They were very good to Gary Johnson, and now that they've got ranked choice voting, and our tour bus was just recently there. I went to 4 different cities in Maine, even though it's a small state with small people, because we've got to make a difference. So I hope we get somewhere. We'll see. Thanks. Okay, you were next, I think.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people believe in libertarian values, small government, but in the past few years, a lot of very right-wing people became part of libertarian. A lot of very right-wing people, like, you know, Don't Tread on Me, Tea Party, all those people joined libertarians, which made it less palatable for, like, average New Yorker. What is your party doing to address that faction in the party?
I'm sorry, to address what about Republicans?
Like a lot of the right-wing people, like extreme right-wing that joined the Libertarian Party, because everything you've said is very progressive so far. So it's like that doesn't go well with the image I have of libertarians. So what are you guys doing to address that?
Well, we're just trying to get the word out there. We're using, oh, and by the way, let me mention, I was told I only have 3 more questions, so you 2 will be the last, okay, to let everybody else know ahead of time. We're just trying to get the word out there with social media, and I think we are getting somewhere because from the very beginning, 75% of our volunteers are from outside the party. We're just hearing people saying, we don't like the 2 choices, we want another choice. So thank you for that. Yes.
I was wondering, in lieu of taxation, how do you plan to keep essential functions of the government running and keep the balanced budget long term?
Just if you go, it's hard with the mask. If you could translate the question.
I said, in lieu of taxation, how do you plan to fund essential functions of the government and keep the budget balanced over a long period of time?
Okay, in lieu of taxation, basically, how do I run the government? Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay, so how do I run the government without taxation? First of all, the income tax only brings in half of our revenues. And I suggest that even if our money, or even if our coffers were flowing with money and we had plenty of money, we should still cut taxes because government is too big. We don't need the Department of Education because education is a local issue. We don't need the CIA doing whatever it is they're doing. We don't need the government getting into every area of our lives. And we've seen how they've messed up retirement, they've messed up Social Security, they've messed up education, they've messed up everything. So we need to cut back services. The first place I would cut it is the military. Again, in order to defend ourselves, we could cut $700 billion easily. We'd still be tied for the highest, for spending the most on military in the entire world, even if we cut $700 billion. I would also cut from the Department of Education because parents, teachers, and students should just make local decisions. And I would cut from foreign aid because basically, you know, there's kind of a joke. The definition of foreign aid is taking money from poor taxpayers and giving it to rich dictators. If Americans want to help other countries, help the people who are hurt in other countries, they can do it on their own. And you know what? You know, we had George Clooney was a few years ago very highly visible. I'd much rather give my money to George Clooney to help people in the Sudan than the United States government. Okay, you're the last one.
I know that you want a more of a state or local role for various policies, but today and yesterday, Governor Cuomo shut down parts of the Jewish community in light of COVID-19 rates right during a Jewish holiday. Do you have any comment on that, or perhaps a federal role?
Yeah, here's why I don't want the federal government to get involved, because anytime they do, there's a price to pay. Anytime you do, they have some kind of regulations. Like, for instance, in education, for every dollar you send to the Department of Education, you only get 11 cents back.